The Kingdom of Hyrule has changed drastically over the years, and with the sequel to Breath of the Wild releasing soon, it's only going to change more. That brings us to this video. A friend of mine known as Lazy Garden Gamer went back into Breath of the Wild to find potential points of interest to check out in Tears of the Kingdom. Together we have created a 2-part tour guide of all of the locations that we think might have some significance in TOTK. Please be aware that this video is purely speculative, as we have yet to get much information regarding Tears of the Kingdom and what will be included in the game. A link to Lazy Garden Gamer's Reddit post covering all of his findings will be in the description. With that said, let's get moving. We'll begin the tour with the Great Plateau. This place was important in Age of Calamity and Breath of the Wild. I'm almost certain it will play a role in Tears of the Kingdom. From the looks of the plateau in the last TOTK trailer, it hasn't lifted into the air. Although, that doesn't mean things haven't changed. Remember, the Great Plateau used to be a place of worship before Calamity Ganon's attack. Depending on the amount of time that has passed between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, construction could have started on the Great Plateau. Things like the front entrance, ruined goddess temples, and the beloved Temple of Time could have all been touched up. Walking through the front entrance of the Great Plateau would be amazing. A proper cutscene leading past all the reconstruction efforts through the opening to the stairs. From there, the temples are our next stop. In nearly every Zelda game that has included the Temple of Time, it has been an important location. It's usually the resting place of the Master Sword. But Breath of the Wild changed that, only including the temple as a landmark with the goddess statue inside it. This made the area feel underused, especially when you include the 3 other goddess temples. This is one spot on the plateau that needs some love in Tears of the Kingdom. Considering the Deku Tree might be missing and the Master Sword has been damaged, the temple could get some use. If this is the Temple of Time from Ocarina and TP, it would still have some connection to the Sacred Realm, and because it used to be the resting place of the Master Sword, it could end up being integral to repairing the Blade of Evil's Bane. The same can be said for the 3 goddess temples leading up to the Temple of Time. It's also possible that instead of repairing the Master Sword, the temple is still the entrance to the Sacred Realm and will be used to find the Triforce. On the other hand, it would be nice to just see this sacred temple spruced up simply for a cutscene or 2 and nothing more. After that, we move on to King Rhoam's grave on top of Mount Hylia. Seeing Zelda make the long journey to her father's grave to pay her respect after 100 years would be heart-wrenching, and I feel it needs to be in the game at some point. If we go off the idea that literal Tears of the Kingdom have fallen to the surface, this might be a good place to search first. Moving down off of Mount Hylia, I want to go over something that I think will happen not just on the Great Plateau, but all around Hyrule, which would be multiple secret underground cave systems opening up. A couple of perfect places for this on the Great Plateau are both of the waterfalls. One feeds into the River of the Dead. In Breath of the Wild, this waterfall already had something hidden behind it, although it didn't open up to a cave system. Instead, it led to a tiny bit of treasure. This spot would be a great option for a cave system leading under Mount Hylia. The second location is a waterfall that comes off of the west side of the plateau. This giant waterfall had nothing hidden behind it and wasn't used until Master Mode was released when the Zelda team decided to place these floating Baco platforms. Beyond that, nothing's here in Breath of the Wild. Perhaps another great location for a cave system to pop up. It could lead deeper than even the Shrine of Resurrection. That's enough of the underground possibilities. Let's take to the skies. Looking above the plateau in the most recent Tears of the Kingdom trailer, we can see that it now has a floating island above it, between the Great Plateau and Mount Nabooru. To the left of the platform is a set of 3 more peeking out from the clouds. While the plateau may not be raising into the air, these platforms being present opens up the possibility that things can lift from the Great Plateau, revealing places we never knew were hidden there. Moving on from the Great Plateau, we come to the Lake Tower region, the perfect place to get your toes wet for the first time. Underwater exploration is one feature that was sorely missing in Breath of the Wild, and if Hyrule's map has truly been expanded, then we should see it return in Tears of the Kingdom. Diving into the lake from the Bridge of Hylia, we'd finally be able to see what lies beneath. Ruins of past temples could be hiding at the bottom of the lake, just like the Arbiter's grounds sticking out of the Gerudo Desert. Say the Zelda team returns to traditional dungeons. This would be the ideal location for a new one. The entrance could be hidden behind the waterfall that feeds the lake, or since TOTK has to do with dragons, it could be connected to Farosh and his spawn point. Apart from normally having a dungeon at the lake, I think it would be a great spot to introduce traditional fishing in Tears of the Kingdom. The small island that used to have a Sheikah shrine on it would be a decent place for an NPC to set up a fishing shop. Drawing off and coming out of the lake, let's make our way over to Guccini Plain, where we can find some peculiar towers. I couldn't make a video about Tears of the Kingdom without mentioning the Zonai, and this is their first set of ruins that we'll be visiting. What is odd about these structures is that the bottom half is of Zonai construction, while the towers all seem to be made by Hylians. The thing is, before Breath of the Wild's release, these towers featured a design of a serpent or dragon, matching up with the Zonai architecture seen throughout Hyrule. The columns were later changed for unknown reasons. In Breath of the Wild, they were used as mere obstacles to obtain treasure. Yet, in Tears of the Kingdom, they might serve a greater purpose. In fact, in the last trailer, we got a glimpse at a group of sky islands that might have sprung up just above this location. I'm curious if these towers will be lifting into the air at some point in the game. Another thing that I'd like to mention is the Korok puzzle at the east end of the plain. While it might look like a bunch of rocks in the ground, from the air it's a Zonai swirl. I know it's probably nothing, but I can't help but feel it might end up having some type of correlation to the giant glyphs we've seen previously. Bouncing from one set of Zonai ruins to the next, we come to the Spring of Courage, a place so old it dates back to the beginning of Hyrule's history and a place that needs a little spotlight in TOTK. It's a double whammy. It has ties to the era of the sky and the Zonai. It would be a letdown to not see this area utilized. When I wandered into the Zonai ruins and found the giant dragon statue at the end, I felt like I was about to enter a temple from Skyward Sword. It was disappointing to only find the spring and a Sheikah shrine hidden behind it. Tears of the Kingdom has the opportunity to turn this entire area into a forest-themed dungeon. With Lazy Garden Gamer's help, I returned to the spring and started poking around Drakuzu Lake. This section of the ruins has been submerged. Since certain structures are presumably lifting out of the ground, I don't think the idea of this area raising up is that far-fetched, revealing a structure below what we see in Breath of the Wild. I'd venture to say that the Spring of Courage and its surroundings have a connection to the sky. Once again, turning to the last trailer, shows us that a rather large island is floating high above the dueling peaks and the Spring of Courage, with more platforms sprinkled below. Even if something like this doesn't happen in TOTK, I'm sure with the Zonai playing a bigger role in this game, we'll return here for one reason or another. Going deeper into the FARON region, we come to a few spots that were underused in Breath of the Wild. One is Tobios Hollow. Nestled between FARON and the Dueling Peaks, Tobios Hollow has a Hinox and a Korok seed to be found, and that's about it. To bring more mystery to this area, a cave or tunnel leading under the Dueling Peaks to a trial or treasure would be sweet. Heading back to the woods, I wanted to go over Korta Lake, which was shown in the newest trailer. This is a great example of taking a neglected area and adding subtle changes to it to make it more interesting. Comparing the shot of Korta Lake in the Tears of the Kingdom trailer to Breath of the Wild, you can see that a cave has appeared on the other side of Link. Depending on how far it goes, cave openings like the one here at Korta Lake would have us exploring for quite some time. I can't wait to travel into the depths of Hyrule with a flame shield, ready to go toe-to-toe with whatever this thing is. Another point to mention here is that Korta Lake seems to be our ticket up to the Sky Islands hanging above the FARON region, so you'll probably want to make a pit stop here to catch a ride. Pressing on brings us to LURELIN Village. Many have theorized that the people of LURELIN are the descendants of the ancient Zonai. Over the years, they decided to settle near the FARON Sea. If the theories are true, LURELIN should become a central location in Tears of the Kingdom. For instance, we could use the village as a way to translate ancient Zonai text. Gurini would be the man for the job. Seeing as Zonai text is hard enough to translate, we could return to Gurini and LURELIN to piece together old text throughout our journey, making it more relevant to the story. Now, if we don't get some type of story segment here, it would be fantastic to see a number of additions. A fishing minigame, more underwater shenanigans off the coast, and some side quests, to name a few. I mean, LURELIN didn't even get the courtesy of being involved in Breath of the Wild's quest from the ground up. which incorporated nearly every other village in Hyrule. Including LURELIN in a large-scale quest to help rebuild would be a wonderful way to bring more players to this beautiful place. The final point of interest I'd like to talk about is just outside of LURELIN. East of the village is a place known as Gamma Cove. Inside is a stone talus, and above is a small cave surrounded by water. While it might not look like much in Breath of the Wild, Gamma Cove could turn into an entrance to another cave system that connects to the smaller one above, or even a network of them that run beneath Mount Dunsel. I'll admit, nothing could change here. I just felt it was worth mentioning since it seems something was started with a small cave above the cove, but was never finished. Continuing our tour brings us to the HATENO region. I'll start with the important areas to visit. One is certainly the LANAYRU Promenade. Judging by the architecture that spans the walkway, it appears the promenade has been around since the era of the sky or shortly after. It features Loftwing statues just like the Forgotten Temple and uses the same decorations around its archways and pillars. The connections to Skyward Sword tell me something is going to happen here. Whether the promenade drains revealing more ruins or raises into the heavens, it'll be exciting to see it get more use. They could even leave it untouched, yet allow us to explore the submerged sections of the promenade to find treasure and hidden secrets from the past. The LANAYRU Promenade also has a giant waterfall with a cave behind it. Now that the shrines are gone, places like this cave will have nothing left in them. Yet again, an opportunity to add more depth to an area that's been previously explored. Pushing past the LANAYRU Promenade is a Spring of Wisdom atop Mount LANAYRU. Just like the Spring of Courage, the Spring of Wisdom will likely be of some importance. This new title is leaning into the whole dragon thing, and this just so happens to be Nature's Spring, so it has that going for it. When I came here while recording, I could visualize one of those green portals to the sky resting at the top of the mountain, ready to take you up to the trial nature has waiting. Mount LANAYRU is one of the two spots I'd like to see an ice-themed dungeon appear, either above the mountain or within. I'm not picky. Apart from that, the spring also shares a connection to Zelda, which could lead us to returning here for some unfinished business. Moving closer to the coast, I want to talk about underwater exploration again. The Necluda Sea would be the ideal place to showcase new diving features, aquatic life, and enemies. As it stands, Breath of the Wild has a limited system when it comes to traveling Hyrule's waters. You can either swim, which can take ages, or you can use a Korok leaf and a raft to get around. With the addition of underwater sections in these locations, we would need an alternate method of transportation. I think a proper sailboat is in order. Imagine sailing the Necluda Sea near Deepback Bay and running into a shiver of Gaiorg who start attacking the boat, or getting pulled into a whirlpool by a giant Octorok. The possibilities are endless. Rounding it off by returning to land, we could end up seeing cave entrances at places like Mopla Point that extend into the mountainside or underwater tunnels flowing back out into the sea. Now it's on to the Akkala region. A place many of us want to explore more of is the Akkala Citadel. With the Sheikah Tower now lowered from the middle of it, we should be able to fully explore the interior in present day. I know in Age of Calamity we got to see a fair portion of the Citadel in its prime, however, I'm sure it holds more secrets that have yet to be found. It's one of those places that could be holding key details to Hyrule's past. I also imagine a new mini-boss like a Darknut being placed inside the Citadel. Directly on the other side of the Citadel is Lake Akkala, which is another area that is primed to be altered for underwater exploration. To be honest, out of all of the time that I put into Breath of the Wild, I had no idea the lake even had ruins, let alone chests at the bottom of it until Lazy Garden Gamer mentioned it. Akkala Sea and Skull Lake are two other locations that would benefit from alterations like this. The last stop we have is a Spring of Power. The same thing that applies to the other two springs applies to this one. It has connections to Skyward Sword and the dragons in Breath of the Wild, which have set it up to be integral to the story. It could be part of the Triforce Fetch quest or have something to do with Ganondorf. Perhaps this will be where he finds his legendary trident, deep within Death Mountain. It may even become the entrance to a fire-themed dungeon, although I think that is better suited for what we have in store for you in Part 2. The LANAYRU region is a part of the tour where we discuss story predictions. This theory comes from Lazy Garden Gamer, and I can't get over how much sense it makes. During Breath of the Wild, after cleansing Vah Ruta of Calamity Ganon's malice, there's a cutscene of the Divine Beast diving into East Reservoir Lake, popping out in Rutala River, diving back down, then emerging at Ruta Lake where it stops to take aim at Hyrule Castle. What's important in this cutscene is that it proves that sections of Zora's domain have underground passages large enough for a divine beast to easily maneuver. What else could be down there? Spoiler warning for anyone who hasn't finished Breath of the Wild yet. Okay, so at the end of Breath of the Wild, Zelda tells Link that she's heard reports of Vah Ruta malfunctioning. If Tears of the Kingdom picks up directly after Breath of the Wild, this could be where it all begins. Traveling to Zora's domain, Link and Zelda investigate Vah Ruta. During all of the commotion from the Divine Beast malfunctioning, a passageway leading under the lake appears. This would be what we see in the first trailer for Tears of the Kingdom, where Link and Zelda are in a large cavern, explaining the luminous stones all over the place. From there, the pair find ancient carvings, telling tales of Ganondorf and how he's a source of malice. With knowledge of Ganondorf's existence, the pair travel to Hyrule Castle, finding the entrance to the cavern housing the Gerudo King. Going down into the depths of the castle, they find Ganondorf in the center of a large room, with a mysterious gauntlet pinning him in place. As Zelda approaches, the ground shifts and the floor falls out from under her. Instinctively, Link goes to catch her, and in the same movement, the gauntlet holding down Ganondorf lets go to save Link. This in turn sets Ganondorf free from his seal. As Link is helped back up, he stands face to face with Ganondorf, who then uses his malice to attack Link, utterly destroying both his arm and the Master Sword. To save him, the gauntlet then fuses with Link's right arm, keeping his life force from being completely depleted, explaining why we will only start with 3 hearts. Link then wakes up on a Zonai altar in the sky or something. It all fits so well and helps fill in the gaps of how Link and Zelda even found Ganondorf's corpse in the first place. East Reservoir Lake was made over 10,000 years ago. I could see it concealing some of Hyrule's dark past. Even so, if it isn't included in the story for Tears of the Kingdom, I feel these tunnels need to be explored at the very least. That concludes this part of our tour of Hyrule. Remember, this is a 2-part video, so we'll continue exploring the rest of the land in the next one. For now, take a load off and consider checking out one of the other videos I have featured above. That's it for this Tears of the Kingdom video. Special thanks goes to Lazy Garden Gamer for creating this list and allowing me to share it with all of you lovely people. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for part 2. Have a wonderful week. RMFH out.